November gardening doesn't mean your growing season has to stop. In fact, some of the most productive crops thrive when planted right now. And I'm about to show you 7 vegetables you can direct south this month that will give you harvests well into winter and early spring, no matter where you live. Look at those seeds in the ground. Welcome back to Serene Sprout, where we dig deeper into practical gardening wisdom that actually works in the real world. I'm thrilled you're here, because today's video is genuinely different from anything else you'll find about November planting. Before we dive in, if you're serious about growing your own food year-round, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We post practical gardening advice twice a week that actually works in real gardens, not just theory. Now, let's talk about these 7 incredible crops. Crop number 1, Japanese bunching onions, Nebuka varieties. Let's start with Japanese bunching onions, specifically the Nebuka varieties that most Western gardeners have never heard of. These aren't your typical green onions or scallions. We're talking about an ancient Japanese crop that's been cultivated for over 2,000 years, developed to withstand harsh winters while producing thick, sweet stems that can grow up to 18 inches long. November is actually the traditional planting time in Japan because these varieties need cold exposure to develop their characteristic sweetness and tender texture. What makes them incredible is their extreme cold hardiness, surviving down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit, which means they'll work in literally every growing zone across North America. The beauty of November sowing is that you're mimicking the traditional Japanese growing method, where seeds germinate slowly in cold soil, develop strong root systems over winter, and then explode with growth in early spring when other onions are just being started indoors. What sets Nebuka onions apart is their culinary versatility and the fact that every part is edible and delicious. The white stems are traditionally grilled whole in Japanese cuisine, becoming incredibly sweet and caramelized. The green tops are more flavorful than regular scallion greens and hold up beautifully in stir-fries and soups. In late spring, if you let some plants mature, they produce these amazing flower stalks called negibozu that are considered a delicacy in Japan, with a mild garlicky flavor perfect for tempura. November sowing also means you'll have the earliest spring onions in your neighborhood, ready to harvest when stores are charging premium prices. Crop number 2, Alexander's Smyrnium oleosacrum. Crop number 2 is Alexander's, and I guarantee 99% of gardeners have never grown this or even heard of it. Yet it was the most important vegetable in European cuisine before celery was domesticated. Alexander's is a biennial plant that was cultivated by the Romans, spread throughout medieval Europe, and then mysteriously disappeared from gardens in the 18th century, despite being incredibly productive and flavorful. Every single part of this plant is edible. The leaves taste like parsley, the stems are like celery, but sweeter, the roots are similar to parsnips, the flower buds are prepared like broccoli, and even the seeds are used as a peppery spice. The reason Alexander's is perfect for November across all climates is its incredible adaptability and cold tolerance. What makes Alexander's genuinely special is the flavor profile and the sheer volume of food you get from one plant. The young stems, harvested in late winter and early spring, have this incredible sweet savory taste with hints of celery, parsley, and myrrh. They're traditionally blanched like celery by earthing up soil around the stems, which makes them even sweeter and more tender. The leaves can be harvested continuously and used exactly like parsley, but with more complexity. In the second spring after your November sowing, the plants send up thick flower stalks that are absolutely delicious when harvested as buds, steamed or stir-fried like broccoli with a unique mustardy flavor. One plant can yield over 3 pounds of edible material across multiple harvests, making this one of the most productive crops per square foot. Crop number 3, Perpetual Spinach Beet, leaf beet. Now for crop number 3, we have Perpetual Spinach Beet, also called leaf beet or spinach chard, and this is completely different from regular chard or beetroot. This is an old European variety that was specifically bred for leaf production over centuries, creating a plant that produces spinach-flavored leaves continuously for up to 3 years without ever forming a root. November sowing is the secret to success because these seeds germinate best in cool soil between 40 and 60 degrees, and the plants establish much stronger root systems when grown through winter rather than started in spring heat. What makes this crop incredible is that it's essentially indestructible, surviving temperatures down to 15 degrees Fahrenheit, thriving in poor soil, handling drought once established, and producing massive yields with zero pest problems. The reason perpetual spinach beet should be in every November garden is the productivity timeline you get from cold season sowing. When you plant in November, the seeds germinate within 10 to 14 days in zones 7 through 11, or they'll wait until late winter in colder zones. The small plants develop deep taproots over winter, going semi-dormant in freezing weather but staying evergreen in mild climates. The flavor and texture of perpetual spinach beet is where it really shines compared to regular spinach or chard. The leaves have a genuine spinach taste, but with a slightly earthier, more mineral-rich flavor and none of the bitterness that chard can develop. Crop number 4. Land Cress, Barbaria verna. Crop number 4 is land cress, Botanicula barbaria verna, and this is hands down the most underrated salad crop for November sowing. Land cress is a European native that tastes exactly like watercress but grows in regular garden soil instead of requiring running water. This was a standard crop in European kitchen gardens for centuries, valued for its peppery, mustardy flavor and its incredible cold tolerance, but it's almost impossible to find in modern seed catalogs. November is actually the only time you should sow land cress because it needs cold weather to perform well, and spring-sown plants bolt immediately in warm weather without producing usable leaves. What makes this crop phenomenal is that it's one of the few salad greens that actually becomes more productive and better tasting in freezing weather, thriving in temperatures down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The magic of November-sown land cress is in the harvest timeline and the plant's unique growth pattern. Seeds germinate quickly even in cold soil, usually within 7 to 10 days, and the small plants establish before winter. In zones 7 through 11, you'll start harvesting peppery leaves by January, getting fresh salad greens in the dead of winter when nothing else is growing. Loving these tips so far? Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. There's plenty more garden goodness coming your way. Crop number 5. Turkish Rocket, Bunyas orientalis. For crop number 5, I'm introducing you to Turkish Rocket, scientifically called Bunyas orientalis, and this is genuinely one of the most unusual and productive crops you can grow with November sowing. Turkish Rocket is a perennial brassica from Eastern Europe and Western Asia that was cultivated in Turkish and Russian gardens for centuries, but is virtually unknown in Western gardening. The plant produces 2 types of edible growth: peppery leaves similar to arugula, but more complex and substantial, and thick flower shoots in spring that are prepared exactly like asparagus, but with a broccoli-like flavor. November sowing is essential because the seeds require cold, moist stratification for at least 8 weeks to germinate properly, meaning spring sowing simply doesn't work. This is also one of the most cold-hardy perennial vegetables in existence, surviving temperatures down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, making it suitable for literally every climate zone. The productivity and longevity of Turkish rockets from single November sowing is almost unbelievable compared to annual crops. When you sow in November, the seeds will germinate in late winter or early spring, depending on your zone, producing a small rosette of deeply lobed leaves in the first year. The flavor profile of Turkish Rocket is complex and changes throughout the season, which is part of what makes it so interesting for adventurous cooks. The leaves harvested in late winter and spring are mildly peppery with nutty undertones, perfect raw in salads or cooked like spinach. Crop number 6. Sea kale, Cramorhytima. Crop number 6 is sea kale, known botanically as Cramorhytima, and this is one of the most prized perennial vegetables in European cuisine that's been almost completely forgotten in North America. Sea kale is a coastal plant native to Atlantic beaches of Europe where it grows wild in sand and gravel. But it was so highly valued that it was cultivated in British kitchen gardens for over 300 years and considered a luxury vegetable superior to asparagus. The plant produces thick, fleshy shoots in early spring that are blanched and eaten like asparagus, with a flavor that's nutty, slightly sweet, and reminiscent of hazelnuts and cabbage combined. November sowing is absolutely critical for sea kale because the seeds have one of the hardest seed coats in the plant kingdom and require 3 to 4 months of cold, moist stratification to germinate, making spring sowing essentially impossible. What makes sea kale extraordinary for November planting across all zones is its extreme adaptability and cold hardiness. This is a plant that evolved on freezing ocean beaches, enduring salt spray, winter storms, and temperatures well below zero, so your garden conditions are actually easier than its natural habitat. It's hardy to at least negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and unlike most perennials, it actually prefers zones 3 through 7 over mild winter climates. When you sow in November, you're mimicking natural conditions where seeds lie on cold beaches all winter before germinating in spring. Sowing sea kale in November requires understanding that you're starting a long-term crop that needs specific conditions. Choose a permanent location in full sun with extremely well-drained soil because waterlogged roots will rot. Sandy or gravelly soil is ideal, and the plant actually prefers lean, infertile soil over rich garden soil. Crop number 7, evening primrose, Enothera biennis. For our final crop, number 7, I'm introducing you to evening primrose, specifically Enothera biennis cultivated varieties. And this is a plant that most people know as a wildflower, but has been used as a food crop for thousands of years by indigenous peoples and early European settlers. Evening primrose is a biennial that produces a rosette of leaves in its first year and a tall flowering stalk in its second year. But here's what most people don't know. The first-year roots are an incredible vegetable, tasting like a cross between parsnips and black pepper, and they've been called German rampion in European cuisine. The young leaves are edible as cooked greens, the flower buds are delicious, and the seeds produce evening primrose oil, which is highly valued medicinally. November sowing is essential because evening primrose seeds require light and cold stratification to germinate well, and fall-sown plants develop much better root systems than spring-sown plants. The roots have this amazing peppery sweet flavor and a texture similar to parsnips, and they're traditionally boiled and served with butter or pickled for winter storage. But you can also leave some plants unharvested, and in their second spring, they'll send up tall stalks covered with buds. These unopened flower buds can be harvested and prepared like green beans, with a slightly nutty flavor. Plus, the plant naturalizes easily, so letting some go to seed gives you continuous crops year after year without replanting. So there you have it, 7 genuinely uncommon crops that transform November from the end of the gardening season into a prime sowing opportunity. These aren't the same tired vegetables you'll find in every other gardening video. These are historical, underutilized crops that work across every climate zone and give you harvests that your neighbors won't believe came from November planting. If you enjoyed discovering these unusual crops, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me which one you're most excited to try, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dive gardening content that goes beyond the basics. Happy sowing, and I'll see you in the next video.